Guys, thanks very much for coming this morning. I appreciate it. I feel blessed and honoured that people would actually want to come and listen to me talk about basketball and about culture. So thank you for your time. For those of you who don't know me or we haven't met before, my name is Jackson Gibbons. I'm the Director of Basketball at City of London Academy in South East London. I'm also the head girls basketball coach there. And Sam asked me if I could speak this morning about positive culture, building positive culture in basketball. I have to be honest with you, for the guys that know me in here, I don't claim to be an expert on this. People seem to credit us a lot for having a positive culture. So it's actually really difficult for me to put this together because I don't think every day think and work on our culture within our program. I just have a way of existing that I think makes us more successful. And I guess building that into a presentation wasn't the most easiest thing for me. However, I think we should all stretch each other every day or stretch ourselves, and that's what this has done. So there's going to be some slides that I'm going to go through that can talk about the things that we do. Again, a little bit of a technophobe, so the slides are a little crude. There's not a lot of unveiling and things like that. It's just blam, it's going to go into the next slide straight away. But hopefully I can give you guys some value over the next 40 minutes or so, and I'll try and wrap up as quickly as we can so we could do a little Q&A at the end. Hopefully, if you've got any questions, I can help answer those questions. Does that sound all right? Cool, all right, perfect. So when we talk about culture and we talk about Cola basketball, we're going to talk about our approach. And so our approach for me starts with all of our standards and our values. And if you talk about standards and values, I always talk about really small, simple, basic things. You can't drive your culture, and your culture can't be what you want it to be if you turn a blind eye to certain things. So I think one of the biggest values that I have, and one of the things that is really, really important to me at Cola, is that everybody should have continuous learning. There should never be a time where there's a young person being neglected or not being taught or not have an opportunity to learn. I'm but one person. Often you only have one or two coaches in a gym. Not every coach can be with every group or every person at all times. And so one of the most powerful ways that I've found over the years to get our young people to be more productive, to continue to learn, to continue to grow, is for us to help our young kids teach other kids and empower them to be able to help people. And I think some people who've been around our program or that I've coached again, you'll see that there's a lot of interaction, there's a lot of talking with our young people. We huddle a hell of a lot just for that purpose, that they're actually coaching each other in those moments. And I think that's really, really important. I spoke about this being slightly difficult for me to put together because I like to keep everything simple. And when you're coming and you're talking to a group of 25, 30 coaches, is the value going to be in the simplicity? I think so. I think that we don't need to complicate something like culture. It needs to be really transparent, really clear, and consistent. Consistent is probably one of the biggest words that I would say for any success in life you would want to apply, okay? And then be the example. What do I mean by be the example? My role as Coach Jackson at City of London Academy is not who Jackson Gibbons is in the real world. And a lot of you might be this way, but our students don't know a lot about my personal life. They don't need to. They're not in and around. I don't have overly familiar conversations because I want those kids to see the best version of me at all times. Not to be fake, not to be, inauthentic, but to be the best version of myself at all times. And I think that it's important to be the example, to empower. We know about that. Accountability is always going to be a powerful word when you talk about culture. And then to respect every opponent. Sometimes in the past, I've seen coaches go into games and they don't respect their opponent. And within not respecting your opponent, what are you saying to your kids? You're saying to your kids that there is an on-off button with respect. There should never be an on-off button with respect. To give you an example, this year, we had a really successful year, extremely successful. And one of the biggest things was that as soon as we felt like the game was in hand, we were never trying to run up the score on another team, and we were trying to get everybody in the game growing and contributing. Now, our fourth quarters this year were horrible. If you look at all of our fourth quarter scores, they were horrible because I would continuously mess up the chemistry and the feel, because I was trying not only to empower our kids and give our slightly kids that get slightly less time an opportunity, but also not to seem to the other team like we have got our foot on their neck and we're gonna take advantage. We're trying to win with class, and hopefully you don't develop enemies doing that. And so it's to respect every opponent. Stay relatable with your kids. I'm getting older. When I first started coaching, I felt like I was the young, cool coach and they could all see it. Now I'm getting older, and if I know a certain song or anything like that, the kids are like, how on earth do you know that song? And I'm like, I'm not 70, but for me, it's about staying relatable in the things that matter, being able to talk, being able to have good conversations with them about things that interest them. And I think one of the biggest ways of doing that is to try and inspire, is to constantly try and inspire, to talk to your kids about your vision for them, where you see them going. I will never tell a 14-year-old kid that there's a can't. The only can't I'll tell a 14-year-old kid is that they can't be 13 again, they can't be 12, and they can't be 11. But I would tell a 14-year-old that they could go and become the president of the United States. It's possible. Has it happened before? No. But at 14, what ceiling is there for that kid? And so sometimes you have kids and they say, Coach, I want to go to the NBA or I want to go to the WNBA. I'll never crush that dream. The only feedback I would give them in that situation is, does your work ethic match your dream? But it's really, really important to be relatable, to build rapport, and to be honest with the kids. And I think that's all, very straightforward and self-explanatory. And then the last part is a really kind of American type feel. The ball club always has to win. And what I mean by that is I'm a huge American football fan. And when you watch the draft, when you watch free agency, people have to make tough decisions every day. They have to make really difficult decisions. A 10-year pro that's been in your program, and that pro, his family's in your city and all of those types of things. And you have to make that decision that maybe we don't need you anymore, or maybe you're not the best thing for our program. How do you cut that person? How do you remove that person? Well, the same thing, I'm always gonna do what's best for our ball club. If I have a parent complaining that they think that their kid should play more minutes, I'm gonna have to have that difficult and tough conversation. I'll go on to that a little bit more in a minute or so. So these aren't mine. These are 14 essential leadership qualities that I found in different places over the years, and I think that they're really, really important. But everything should start with trust. Your students, your kids, your players, whatever age group, everything should start with trust. It sounds simple and it sounds basic, but sometimes we can get drawn into saying what sounds comfortable at a time. If you say what sounds comfortable every single time you're challenged in a situation, then unfortunately people are going to develop expectations from your comfortable answer. We have to be transparent, we have to be honest, and everything needs to start with trust. In our program, conflict is constant. We're constantly challenging each other, we're constantly pushing the boundaries of our kids and our players and trying to stretch them. No elephants means there's no elephants in the room. I'm going to challenge something if I think it's not right, on a consistent basis every day. I'm not going to let something marinate until it becomes bigger than I can control. I'm going to constantly, every day, go at the things that I think are amazing, and in turn, I'm going to empower our students to do that. We do something called sandwich feedback. I don't know if everybody knows about sandwich feedback, but you say something positive, you give the constructive feedback in the middle, and then you end it on something positive. You teach your kids or your players that type of feedback. After a little while, it becomes ingrained and it becomes natural for them. Seeds depend on soil. So what does seeds depend on soil mean? It essentially means that what we allow is going to happen. And if I can harvest our soil and I can make it essential, the seeds are going to grow. If I can make the soil a fertile place where everybody feels like they've come to learn, to grow, and they have an opportunity to be a part of something, then essentially there'll be an opportunity to grow, and people will feel more involved and more invested. Develop a coaching culture within your players. There's no possible way, and there's some very high-level coaches in here, and I would imagine we're all at different stages of our coaching journey. There is no possible way one figurehead can coach every single thing that needs to happen on a team. But if you empower your players and you give them the opportunity to grow and to be in a situation where they're able to, teach each other, and I always say kids teaching kids, if you're a youth coach, is one of the most powerful things, because who's more relatable to a kid than another kid, than somebody their age? So if somebody their age can teach them something and give them a valuable lesson, then we have to empower our group to be able to do that. Know your gaps. What does know your gaps mean? Well, there's an amazing book by Dan Sullivan called The Who Not How, or Who Not How. And that is essentially a book about how you are able to look at your strengths, allow your strengths to be your strengths, but also to figure out that you don't have to do everything in your program, that other people can fill in and facilitate your weaknesses or the areas that aren't necessarily strong. I would advise everyone, or I would recommend everyone to read Dan Sullivan, The Who Not How. I think it's a really, really good book. It reframed my thinking about 3-4 years ago when I read it, because it made me think that I don't have to sit at the head of everything we do. And we've had 2 extremely successful seasons over the last 7 years. The first time I was a little bit of a lone ranger, a solo bandit as such. And this year, I had an amazing coaching staff that really, really helped make everything a lot more easier. And I can tell you I was a lot happier in 2022 than I was in 2017, and the achievements were equal, but I just felt that it was spread in a better way and a lot more manageable for me. Be urgent with feedback. Goes back to what I was talking about before with conflict is a constant. I'm not going to wait and let something marinate 2 or 3 weeks because it's starting to irritate me. I'm going to deal with it at the core. As soon as it happens, I'm going to nip it in the bud. If it needs to escalate, we're going to escalate it, but I'm never going to run from those type of things. And I don't think that, as a successful coach, you should do those things. And then again, empower your decision makers. If you want to be the coach that you say you want to be, then having the people around you happy is going to be really, really important. And I think the more you can empower your decision makers, the more your program is going to grow and it's going to flourish. We're going to go on to the next slide. So I have a task. I told you it was a little bit crude. It wouldn't be CPD without a task. Okay, it wouldn't be. So what I want you all to do is find someone in the room that you aren't familiar with or that you don't know and speak for 2 or 3 minutes, roughly 90 seconds each. The discussion topic would be what you believe forms positive culture, and have fun with it, have a relaxed conversation, and by the end of it, I just want you to note down the 3 key points that you took from the other person. But please mingle, find somebody, speak to somebody that you don't know, and have a conversation for about 90 seconds, for about 3 minutes, and I'll be back. So we'll move on and we'll come back to this shortly. If you've got your 3 things, you could just note it down as a word or whatever, but you've got your 3 things and we'll come back to it shortly in a few minutes. So if we hit the next slide, then this is an example type task that we do. And there's 2 tasks on here. The first one is the buddy exercise. So we started doing this in the pandemic. I'm sure you guys, everybody was doing Zoom calls with the kids, and it became, a little bit of an arduous thing. It was very taxing, challenging to provide, the kids with stuff to do within, the 6 months or whatever it was that we were in the house. So what we did is we gave them a buddy exercise, really, really simple. We drew names out of a hat. You partnered up with somebody else on the team, and you had to go away and you had to learn. We gave you 30 questions. You had to learn as much about your teammates as possible. And what we found through the buddy exercises, at first they were all resistant to it and they didn't enjoy it. And when we came back and we were in the bubbles of 6, it was amazing for us to see that 90% of the kids that were in the buddy exercises chose to be in somebody else's bubble group because they were only in bubbles of 6. And they built rapport, they built an understanding of who the other people were, and so we carried it on even after the pandemic. We started doing it by force almost, and we continued to do it after the pandemic, and it worked really well. It's just 30 questions. It's about any questions you want. What's your heritage? What's your grandmother's maiden name? What's your favorite food? One of the questions was ketchup or mayo. That's a hotly contested debate at the moment in our school. It's like they really get passionate about it. And so with those things, we found over the years over the last 2 years, that's brought a lot of success, and it's really helped the kids get to know each other better. And it sounds simple, but it's something that's worked. And then this, I don't know how well you guys can see. This is actually something that I did back in 2016, 2017 with my dear friend Steve Veer, who coached with me for half a season. And we had an extremely talented team, and we didn't really know how to get all of the kids invested. So we did a team brainstorm, and we came up with a load of different things on a board. And they drove it. We sat at the back of the room. We were very intentional with what we were asking them to do, and intentional is one of the buzzwords in coaching at the moment, but it was that. It was very intentional with what we were asking them to do. And the exercise was essentially, how can we be great? How can we be a great team? And the accountability was on them. We gave them no guidance in terms of just tell us how we can be great on offense and defense. Tell us all of the things that are going to work. And so they came up with all of the things that they're going to bring and give. I don't know if you guys can all see it well from your vantage point, but they decided to write down all of the things that they would bring and give, and it was things along the lines of discipline, create memories, which is really, really important, especially in girls basketball, I found. I'm not saying that boys don't want to create memories, but I think Mark, who's the other person in here that I know that works with girls, it's a very different coaching experience, isn't it? It's just based on a lot more unity and interaction within themselves and growing and bonding. And so these are all the things that they came up with on offense, on defense, and then these are all the things that they wouldn't do, that they committed to and that they wouldn't do. So this was up in our gym. It wasn't a secret. We weren't hiding it from anyone. It was on the wall in our gym for the whole season. So every time there's a breakdown, every time something happens, these are their words, not mine. These are their standards. These are their values. This is what they're driving towards. And so we've done this each and every year since, except this season. The only reason we didn't do it this season is because I never felt that the group that we had this season actually needed us to be able to do it. And so we didn't do it this season. But I think that the team brainstorm exercise and giving this structure really helped our culture. So back to the 14 essential leadership qualities. Keep the vision visible. So at the start of the season, we're all going to have a goal. We're all going to have, an idea of what we want to create and what we want to achieve. Mine and Cola is never to win championships. We play senior basketball so that our kids can get beaten up and play against adults so that they can improve. And people always kind of look at me like, are you sure? Our goal is actually to win an under 18 championship out of all of them. The WEABL is the one that we want to win the most, but we always want to focus on winning our age group, and the age group generally is the under 18s. So it's keep the vision visible. It's not, allow that to fade. You're working with young people generally, and often throughout a season, visions can move around, but you've got to keep it visible at all times. Focus on strengths. I think that there's something that I do well and I want to continue to do over the years, and I'm not a huge ego-driven person in terms of talking about what I do well. It's that the things that we do well, we're going to try and get even better at those things because that builds confidence within a group. If you're constantly looking at what you do well and saying, right, we're good at that, now we have to go and get good at all of these other things, that's right, but eventually you start to neglect the things that you do well, and then you're always in every practice working on things that the kids aren't confident doing. That doesn't help your chemistry, it doesn't help your culture if you're not giving them the foundations of confidence and working on the strengths. Self-awareness is the first brick. What does that mean? It means that I'm always constantly evaluating and reviewing myself. I know that there's tons of tools that people do. Mine's internal. I write it down and I journal. And for me, that is enough for me to go back and start to realize when I'm coming off course and I'm missing out. And I journal in life anyway, so it becomes nothing for me to do. But self-awareness for the coach and for the people that are leading the program are extremely important for you to understand where you are with your kids and the relationships, or the team and the relationships. Make it easy to talk about and give feedback. Now, when I found that principle on the internet, it actually said, make it easy to talk about mistakes, but we don't talk about mistakes in our program. For us, there's no mistakes, there's only feedback. okay? And a mistake would mean that it's something that you can never reverse. For us, you can reverse anything or change the feeling about anything afterwards. And so we want to make it really easy to talk about feedback and be able to give feedback in our program. One of the ways that we do it is to do the sandwich feedback. We do a lot of review exercises after. So one of the things we got when we went to Madrid, we watched the young kids playing 2-on-2 up and down the court, and nobody was coaching. The coaches weren't giving direction, they weren't telling them what to do. And so what we have done since we came back from Madrid is we allow our kids to play 2-on-2, and then they go away and they speak in their groups and they review, and they come back and they present us 2 things that they did well and 2 things that they could improve on. And it will never be about mistakes, it will only be about feedback, and that gets the group to essentially coach themselves and learn how to manage the situations. What's the next one? Be where you're supposed to be. This is more of a mantra that I created years ago that I try and instill with our players. It's really, really easy to be successful if you're where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Some of my dearest friends who played professional basketball used to arrive 40 minutes before everybody else just because they're pros. And so being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there, whilst really, really simple, is very important. And do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. Sounds, again, really, really simple, but if you speak to any of our players, they'll say coach is constantly raving about do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. And hopefully that becomes ingrained in their minds and they realize that they have a responsibility to the group to do what they're supposed to do so that we can be successful. For coaches, protect your refresh time. I used to work 70 plus hours a week. I honestly think in 2018, 2019, I nearly died of exhaustion, and now I'm taking a lot more and better self-care. The reason I'm taking better self-care is because the better I am, the better our players are going to be. And so as coaches, you need to protect your refresh time, the time you go away, and then invest in yourself. You should be continually growing, and we'll talk about that a little later as well, just before we wrap up. So task 2, find a different person in the room this time. Give each other the 3 key points that your partner gave you or that you feel like you got from the last group, and discuss and pick the 2 most important for you, what stands out for you, hopefully of the 6 points that you had to discuss. And once complete, I'll tell you what we would do in that situation within our program. So somebody different, give that person some of the points that you got from the other people, and we'll do it for about 90 seconds again. So what we would do with that in our program is we would essentially get the 2 most profound points that each group had, and we would bring it all together on one document, similar to what they did, the document I showed you before, and we would say to the kids that this is the culture that you've chosen, that this is what you've chosen because it hasn't come from one person offering it forward. I've given Coach Kelson my theory, he's gone somewhere else and he's taken in another group those 2 theories or those however many theories with him to be able to empower that group, and that group is then fed back to the wider team. And that stops, I guess, personal agendas and things like that, because it's going to be my values that he agrees with and he embodies that he wants to push out to the group. And that's something that, again, we've done over the years. So, real quick one, rack. In our program, we reward, I remember I did a call with Billy Beddoe about 2 years ago. It was in the lockdown, and he said, what do you guys do to reward good culture and positivity? And I couldn't remember at the time, and I glanced over it, but we've been doing random acts of kindness and rewarding them in our program for the last 3 or 4 years. Random acts of kindness can be anything. For others, for oneself, it can be in school, it can be in the community, but it's trying to teach and empower our kids to serve every day. Okay? You can only take out what you put in a situation. If you come to take from a situation, the well is going to run empty very, very quickly. But if you've got a group of kids that come in and they're willing to serve and give back, people have asked me in the past, how come your kids take out the bleachers before games? I say, well, they're not going to come out if they don't take them out. We're not going to take them out. Well, how come they put them away? Because they won't come out the next time before they put them away. Their investment, if they want a crowd watching them, is to take the bleachers out and to put them back away. And I'm sure we all do these things. I'm not saying that it's unique to our program, but we will reward rack and random acts of kindness in our program and take massive note of that at all times. So in summary, and the last part of this all is it always starts with you, the coach, okay? If I, Jackson Gibbons, who runs our program, isn't looking after myself, if I'm not doing the best by me, how can I be there for everybody else? And I have some emotional, some draining, some inspiring, some phenomenal conversations with young people every week. It's a blessing to do what I do. And if I don't look after this, how can I be the best person and the best place to serve these young people? And it's about knowing your worth, protecting your peace, investing in yourself daily, challenging your own growth. I'm very, very big on self-development. Some people laugh at it. I'm reading. I'm a lifelong learner. I'll never stop. Be authentic. As a coach, I can't stress this enough. Be you. Don't try and be anybody else. Be the best authentic version of yourself. And it says, yes, be you. Have your own mentor. I have a coach. I work with a coach. He's not related to basketball at all. He's related to another field and area that I have in my life, but he pushes me in all areas of my life. Continuously serve and give value. Plan your refresh time we spoke about earlier on. Limit your accessibility. I don't answer and respond to everybody. Mobile phones are the most crazy thing on the planet. People feel like they should have 24 access to you in this day and age, and especially as a coach, I no longer take phone calls from our parents. We have a team sharing app that we use called Spond. They arrange a call, I'll Zoom them, 10-minute limited call, and we'll discuss whatever the interaction is. If you're picking up your phone on a daily, speaking to parents and other coaches and everybody else, and everyone feels like they've got 24 access to you, you won't last in this game for very long, I don't think. And I used to do it, and I learned the hard way.
What's that app called, please?
Spond. Yeah, it's a team sharing app, so it's really good for safeguarding as well. Neil from Myesco is the one that suggested it to us about 4 or 5 years ago. And then challenge but never demean self or others. We all feel like we've let people down from time to time, but actually you haven't. If you're showing up and you're doing your best and you're constantly giving, don't bring yourself down. We coach bad games. I had my worst game of the year coaching in the Division I women's final. And when I watched it back, the commentators were saying, oh, Jackson Gibbons is stood on the sideline. He looks cool as anything. He hasn't blinked. Yeah, I didn't know what to do. We were playing terribly. I didn't have the answer. I just thought, do you know what? The less I interact with them right now and frustrate them, the more likely they are to dig themselves out of this bad patch that they're playing in. So I appreciated the credit, but I didn't have a good game, and I didn't go home and beat myself up after it. I just said it was just one of those days. People seldom remember positive things you tell them about yourself, but people always remember positive things they see you do. Okay, and that's one of the biggest things for me is people say that I'm humble or that I don't, I'm not out there seeking glory or whatever. I just think that people will see what you do and you'll get the credit in the right way rather than you spouting and telling everybody that, I've done this and these are all the things that we've done. We've all got our feelings. I feel, Mark's in here. I feel like the Lions' success this year and our girls' success wasn't made a big enough deal about this year. I think that they're two historic teams that had an extreme success, but it just seems like it wasn't enough of a deal being made. But it's not for me to go and scream from the rooftops. People come and tell me, I say, I agree with you, but I'm not gonna start screaming and shouting about it unless I'm doing Hoopsfix Clinic. And the last part, I don't know, Tope, if we have time, but if there are any questions, any observations or any feedback, I would love it. I'm always trying to grow. Sometimes I go too fast. Presentation might have been too many words, might not have been enough pictures or videos or whatever. Happy to either do this now or do it later, but if anybody has any questions before we wrap up, I'd be happy to take them before we
finish. Do you feel that giving your players power every year to come up with almost their own culture, I guess, in a way of their work, do you feel like you then have to adapt every year?
Culture is never consistent. It changes every single year. Our kids in 2017, their personalities, the values that they're all completely different. I'm gonna put my spin on it, but it has to come from the group because every single group's different. Sometimes you have really, really strong leaders and other times you don't. And sometimes you have to lead by committee. So yeah, for me, culture's ever evolving. It never stays the same. And some of the quotes or the things that we used to do in 2017 that I thought were incredible aren't relevant to our group now and vice versa. And we didn't know those things back then.
You said you changed your values year to year?
Not mine, but the group's values. So the document that I showed you before about how we can be great, that will never be the same things because it's different groups and their values about what they believe we can do to be successful will be different. And so, yeah, I just believe culture is ever evolving.
And this is prior to getting a new group coming in. Obviously, there's groups will be already with you for, you keep the groups for 2-3 years, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you do with those groups who are already older and have their values and the new groups come?
You integrate the group and you start again. I start every season from scratch. So we have a team meeting at the start of the season. I don't know if there's a piece of paper in here. I don't know if you guys know the circle and the tube analogy with a piece of paper. Has anyone got a piece of paper? So I do this at the start of every season. You guys can feel free to take it if you want. But I put half the group on one side of the room and half the group on the other side of the room. And I say to them, because I hate judgments and I hate people thinking that they know what's right for another person. Nobody knows anyone's story 100%. I'm sure everyone's lives in here are hard in some way, but we're all blessed in other ways. And so I'll have one group in that corner and another group in front, and I'll hold the piece of paper up like this. And if we do it this way, it still works. The guys in front of me, what do you see? See a circle and a tube. The guys to my right, what do you see? What do you see from this direction? What shape? Cylinder. It's a piece of paper. It's just two different views. So every season we will have that conversation and I'll explain, you never actually know something. You shouldn't make assumptions. You shouldn't go into a situation assuming that you know how something is. You should go with an open mind and realize that we're all just pieces of paper in different shapes and different forms. Yeah? Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions?
You said your values don't change like year on year, but the teams do. So have you ever been in a situation where there's completely different values between yours and the teams? And how do you manage that?
So yeah, I'm going to be in a 3-year battle or a 2-year battle with our kids to change their mindset, and I want them to come over to our way of thinking. But if their values are positive value and it adds something to what we're doing, then we're going to roll with it. I'm in a battle with one of our girls playing today because she's broken some of our school rules, or not school rules, but our team rules, but she thinks she's not going to play for me anymore. But she's still going to be in school for another 6 weeks. So if I let the consistency off that and I say it's okay, then I'm essentially allowing her to dictate our values and dictate our culture, and I don't want that. And so, yeah, there's going to be, what's important for one group is not always going to be important for another group. My core values are things like integrity, the power of your word, keeping your word. That's really, really important. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to follow through on it. And I want our kids to always be that way and understand those things. I think that if you can keep your word in every situation, then you will always start to feel like you're a wholesome person and that you're doing the right thing in each situation. And I think that that's really, really important. Yeah.
So you see your program as success on the court, and you've seen a lot of winning. Is there a certain time that you see a change in attitudes or mindset from the players? And if you see that, how do you stop it? How do you discuss it with them? How do you keep their feet on the ground, basically?
So when I spoke earlier, I was conflict is a consistent in our program. So I'm always going to challenge things. If a kid doesn't go to school, like people have said in about our program over the last few years, that sometimes they'll come in and our best players sat on the side. Well, we're not going to allow that person's growth to be stunted just to win a game. And I honestly, it sounds cliche, a lot of people say it, I don't go into things to win. I think we've been successful as a byproduct of how we've lived and how we've tried to nurture and manifest these young players moving forwards. And it's not always backfired on us, but sometimes it has backfired on us. And so, we had an amazing team in 2016, boys team, and lost to Charnwood in the playoffs because we sat out our best player because he stole hot dogs in the canteen. And we could have turned a blind eye and said, oh, we're not going to, and I'm sure other people do that. I'm not saying that we're, the outlier in doing that stuff, but you have to be consistent with that stuff. So, look, Kelson, last one.
Don't really know how to word the question, but I listened a lot and I like what you said about not making yourself always available. And I don't know, I'm struggling with that. So how do you do that? Is that a conversation you have with your kids so they know that you're not always going to be available, or is that something that just kind of happens throughout the year? How do you manage that?
So yesterday I was trying to finish this and my daughter was doing this every 5 minutes. School is school, I can't hide from them, I can't avoid them. The team sharing app really helps Spond because they can't get to, that's the only way they can message us. They don't call us, they don't have my number and things like that. They just go through the app. And then talking about the kids, in school I will always try and be available. It's more about parents expecting your time outside of hours. There's seldom an emergency. If there's an emergency, then you tackle it, but generally somebody else's priority isn't your priority. So I ask them, can you arrange a Zoom call? Can you go through the team sharing app? I'll get to it when I get to it. But if you get a WhatsApp message from someone, it's quite personal. It's kind of comes straight to your phone, whereas you get a message on Spond, it's like, I'm not gonna look at Spond this weekend. It's not my business because I'm not at work. And I think that has been game changer for me and really, really important over the last 2.5 years. So yeah, I'd just like to say, guys, thank you so much for listening. I know I could be wordy, but I hope that there's some value in that for all of you, and feel blessed and honored to be able to speak to you, and I hope to connect with you all in the future. So thanks a lot, guys.